Keiko Tanaka had forgotten how to be a woman. For 3 years, the word woman had meant weakness, luxury, vanity, betrayal of the nation. Japanese war culture was clear. Women existed not to be beautiful, but to produce. Makeup was forbidden, fancy clothes were forbidden, even looking in a mirror was considered a luxury. August 1945, California. The war was over, and Keiko was waiting for repatriation at an American POW camp when Sergeant Dorothy Miller approached her. She held a pink box. "This is for you," she said. When Keiko opened it, she froze. Lipsticks, blush, eyeshadows. Woman things. Forbidden things. Was an enemy woman giving her these? Dorothy smiled. "The war is over. You can be a woman again." Keiko held the lipstick, trembling. Something she hadn't worn on her face in 3 years. An identity she tried not to remember. When she applied lipstick to her lips for the first time, she looked in the mirror. Her eyes filled with tears. Because there was a woman in the mirror. Not just a soldier, not just a production unit, a woman. And in that moment she understood. Her enemies had given back what her own country had stolen. The right to be a woman. The freedom to be beautiful. Permission to be herself. Keiko had been 21 when the war consumed everything. Before that, she'd been an ordinary girl from Kyoto who liked pretty kimonos and spent too long arranging her hair. Her mother had taught her the traditional arts, tea ceremony, flower arrangement, the subtle ways a woman moved through the world with grace. Then came 1942, and everything changed. The Women's Volunteer Labor Corps. Mandatory service. No exceptions. Pretty girls and plain girls, rich girls and poor girls, all became workers in the great machine of war. Keiko was assigned to a munitions factory in Osaka, assembling artillery shells 12 hours a day. The transformation was immediate and brutal. Long hair was cut short, hygiene reasons, they said, but really it was about erasing femininity. Makeup was banned as frivolous and unpatriotic. Traditional kimonos were replaced by baggy work pants and shapeless jackets. Even mirrors disappeared from the dormitories. Vanity serves the enemy, the supervisors said. Keiko had tried to hold on to small pieces of herself. A ribbon saved from her favorite dress, tied around her wrist beneath her sleeve. A small compact mirror hidden under her mattress, used late at night when no one was watching. But even those tiny rebellions felt dangerous. Other women were reported for less. Being caught with makeup could mean public shaming, reduced rations, or transfer to even harsher labor. By 1943, she'd stopped trying. The girl who'd loved pretty things was buried under exhaustion and survival. When she looked at her reflection in windows, the few times she glimpsed one, she barely recognized herself. Thin, hard, angular. A machine in human form. The factory was captured by American forces in June 1945. Keiko remembered the chaos, explosions, shouting, the sudden silence when production stopped. She'd expected execution. Japanese propaganda had been clear about what Americans did to captured women. But instead, there were trucks, processing stations, a long journey to California, and a POW camp that looked nothing like the torture facilities she'd been promised. Camp Livingston sat in the dry California hills, surrounded by scrubland and summer heat. The women, about 200 of them, from various factories and military support roles, were housed in clean barracks with real beds. The food was adequate. The treatment was professional, if not warm. American guards maintained distance, following strict protocols about interaction with female prisoners. But there was no community, no connection. The Japanese women kept to themselves, suspicious of kindness that felt like manipulation. They wore the same shapeless work clothes they'd been issued. They kept their hair short and practical. They moved through days with the mechanical efficiency learned from years of factory work. Keiko worked in the camp laundry, hot, steaming work that at least felt familiar. She rarely spoke to anyone. What was there to say? The war was over, Japan had lost, and soon they'd be sent back to a homeland that probably didn't exist anymore. Then came August 15th, the announcement of Japanese surrender. Hirohito's voice on the radio, speaking words that shattered the foundation of everything they'd been taught. Japan had lost. Unconditionally. The women didn't know how to react. Some cried. Some sat in stunned silence. Others maintained rigid denial. This was propaganda. Japan would never surrender. The emperor would never speak such words. But deep down, everyone knew it was true. The war was over. They were going home. To what? No one could say. Sergeant Dorothy Miller had been assigned to Camp Livingston in March 1945. At 32, she was older than most of the guards, a veteran of administrative work who joined the WWII to do her part for the war effort. She'd expected to hate the Japanese prisoners. Her brother had died at Guadalcanal, and the wound was still fresh. But watching these women move through the camp like ghosts, she'd felt something unexpected: recognition. They looked like her factory workers back home, exhausted, ground down, trying to survive systems bigger than themselves. The enemy hadn't made them this way. The war had. After the surrender announcement, Dorothy received new orders: prepare the women for repatriation. That meant processing paperwork, arranging transportation, and ensuring they had appropriate civilian clothing for the journey. The last part was a problem. Most had arrived in work clothes or military uniforms. They had nothing suitable for returning to civilian life. Dorothy requisitioned supplies: simple dresses, undergarments, shoes. Standard issue items that met minimum requirements. But as she sorted through the clothes, something bothered her. These women were being sent back to devastated cities with nothing but the clothes on their backs. No dignity. No preparation for rebuilding lives. She thought about her own closet back home. Dresses she'd worn to dances. Lipstick she'd carefully applied before dates. The small rituals of femininity that made her feel human during the week's exhausting work. These women had been denied all of that. Not by Americans, but by their own culture's demands. That's when Dorothy made a decision that went beyond regulations. She and 3 other female staff members pooled their resources. They went to town, bought makeup at the drugstore, gathered gently used dresses and shoes from local women's groups. Small things, but meaningful. The morning she brought the boxes to the barracks, Dorothy was nervous. This could go wrong in so many ways. The women might see it as mockery, or charity from enemies, or another form of control. But she'd decided it was worth the risk. Keiko was folding laundry when Dorothy entered the barracks carrying several cardboard boxes. The women looked up with wary curiosity. Dorothy set the boxes on a table and opened the first one. Inside were cosmetics. Lipsticks in various shades, compacts of powder and blush, small bottles of perfume. The women stared like they were looking at artifacts from another civilization. "These are for you," Dorothy said through the camp translator, Private Tanaka, a Japanese-American woman who'd spent most of the war proving her loyalty. "For going home." "Makeup?" one woman asked, her voice uncertain. "We are not allowed." "The war is over," Dorothy said gently. "You're allowed now." She picked up a lipstick, a soft pink shade, and held it out toward Keiko, who'd unconsciously stepped closer. "Would you like to try?" Keiko's hand trembled as she took the lipstick. She'd seen her mother use these, years ago, before the war made such things shameful. The metal tube felt foreign and familiar at once. "There's a mirror," Dorothy said, pointing to a small compact mirror she'd set on the table. "You can see." Keiko opened the lipstick. The color was delicate, feminine, everything she'd been taught to despise as weak. But her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from another life. She applied it carefully, the way her mother had taught her when she was 15. When she looked in the mirror, something cracked inside her chest. The face looking back had color, life, femininity. It was still her face, thin, marked by hardship, but it was a woman's face. Not a worker's, not a soldier's, a woman's. Tears spilled before she could stop them. She tried to wipe them away, but Dorothy gently caught her hand. "It's okay," Dorothy said softly. "You're allowed to cry too." Other women moved toward the boxes, tentatively at first, then with growing boldness. They picked up lipsticks, tested colors on their hands, helped each other apply makeup with the awkward enthusiasm of people rediscovering a forgotten skill. The transformation was remarkable, not because makeup made them beautiful, though it did add color to faces worn pale by years of factory work, but because something shifted in their posture, their expressions, their very presence. They started to move like women instead of machines. The second box contained dresses. Nothing fancy, simple cotton dresses in various patterns. donated by local churches and women's auxiliaries. But after 3 years of shapeless uniforms, even simple dresses felt revolutionary. "You can try them on," Dorothy encouraged. "Take what fits." The women retreated to their bunks, shy about changing in front of guards. But soon they emerged in dresses that actually had waists, hemlines that fell gracefully, fabrics that moved with them instead of against them. Some were too big, some too small, but they could be altered. The important thing was the feeling of wearing something that acknowledged their bodies as female rather than just functional. Keiko chose a blue dress with small white flowers. It fit reasonably well, and when she looked down at herself, she barely recognized her own body. For 3 years, clothing had been about hiding, about neutralizing gender, about becoming uniform and interchangeable. This dress made her visible as a woman, and that visibility felt both terrifying and liberating. The third box held shoes. Real shoes, not work boots or military issue, but women's shoes with modest heels and closed toes. Practical enough for daily wear, but distinctly feminine. Keiko hadn't worn heeled shoes since 1942. Her feet had grown accustomed to flat, heavy boots. When she slipped on a pair of black pumps, she had to relearn how to walk. Her posture changed. Her gait changed. She felt taller, more deliberate, more present in her body. "They look good," Dorothy said, watching her take careful steps across the barracks. Keiko met her eyes. "Why you do this?" "We are enemy." Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "Because the war is over. And because I think you deserve to go home feeling like people, not just defeated soldiers." Besides she smiled slightly. "You're women. Same as me. That matters more than who won the war." That evening, the barracks buzzed with an energy that hadn't existed before. Women experimented with makeup, traded dresses, helped each other with hair. Some tried styles they'd seen in American magazines. Others attempted to recreate traditional Japanese looks from memory. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about reclaiming something that had been taken from them. The right to care about appearance, not because it served some national purpose, but because it felt good. Because they were human, and humans like to feel attractive and presentable and worthy of care. Fumiko, a woman in her late 20s who'd been a telephone operator before conscription, sat beside Keiko, carefully applying eyeliner. "I forgot how to do this," she said, laughing at her shaky line. "My hand isn't steady anymore." "Mine either," Keiko admitted. "Factory work changes your hands. Everything changes everything," Fumiko said softly. Then, looking at her reflection in the compact mirror, "But maybe we can change back. A little." Not everyone participated. Some women refused the makeup and dresses on principle. "This is American corruption," one woman said firmly. "We should return home as Japanese, not as Western imitations." Others simply felt too broken, too exhausted to care about appearance when everything else had been lost. But for many, the small act of putting on lipstick or a dress felt like reclaiming a piece of identity that war had stolen. They weren't becoming American. They were remembering how to be themselves. Over the following days, Dorothy and the other female guards organized additional activities. A basic hairstyling workshop, where women who'd worked in salons before the war taught others how to style short hair attractively. A sewing circle, where they altered donated clothes to fit better. Even a small gathering where they practiced walking in heels again, stumbling, laughing, helping each other balance. The camp's male guards watched with bemused confusion. This wasn't in the manual. But Colonel Patterson, the camp commander, allowed it. "They're going home to hell," he told his staff. "If lipstick helps them face it, I'm not going to stop it." Repatriation was scheduled for September. The women would board ships in San Francisco, cross the Pacific, and land in Yokohama, or what remained of it. From there, they'd scatter to hometowns that might not exist anymore, families that might be dead, futures that were utterly uncertain. As the date approached, the initial excitement about feminine items gave way to deeper contemplation. Keiko found herself standing in front of a mirror one evening, wearing her blue dress and carefully applied lipstick, and wondering, would this matter when she got home? Would anyone care that she'd reclaimed her femininity when cities were rubble and food was scarce? Dorothy found her there. Second thoughts. "I don't know what waits," Keiko said in halting English. "Maybe makeup is stupid. When no food, no home. Maybe, Dorothy agreed. But maybe it helps you remember your worth more than just survival. That you're a person who deserves beauty, even in hard times. She paused. My grandmother came from Ireland during the famine. She told me she kept one nice hat through everything. Said it reminded her she was still human, not just a refugee. That hat mattered more than anyone understood. Keiko touched the lipstick on her lips. In Japan, we teach women must be strong. Not pretty. Strong for country. You can be both, Dorothy said. Strong doesn't mean you have to erase everything that makes you who you are. The night before departure, the women gathered in the barracks one last time. Someone had procured a radio, and music drifted through the space. American big band that none of them fully understood, but all could feel. Some women danced together, practicing steps they'd seen American guards do. Others sat quietly, writing letters to families they hoped still existed. Keiko sat on her bunk, carefully packing the small bag she'd been allowed for the journey. The blue dress, neatly folded. A lipstick Dorothy had told her to keep. A small compact mirror. A pair of shoes that made her feel like a woman instead of a work unit. Not much, but infinitely more than she'd had 3 days ago. Fumiko sat beside her. Do you think we'll use these things? At home? I don't know. Maybe not right away. But someday. Keiko looked at the lipstick in her hand. This small thing, it reminds me I was a girl once. Before the war. Maybe I can be again. If there's anything left to be a girl in, Fumiko said quietly. They sat in silence, contemplating a future neither could predict. The war had taken so much. But in these final days, their enemies had given something back. Not material wealth or political freedom, but something perhaps more fundamental. Permission to be human in all the complicated, feminine, beautiful ways their own culture had forbidden. The next morning, the women boarded buses for San Francisco. They wore their dresses and makeup. Some wore heels, though they'd packed sensible shoes for the long journey ahead. They looked like women going somewhere, not prisoners being discarded. Dorothy and the other female guards stood at the gate, watching them leave. Some women waved. Some bowed in traditional Japanese style. Some just looked back with expressions that mixed gratitude and grief and uncertainty. As Keiko's bus pulled away, she caught Dorothy's eye through the window. She touched her lips, where lipstick still remained, and nodded once. Dorothy nodded back. 10 years later, Keiko would write Dorothy a letter from Kyoto. She'd found her family, what remained of them. She'd married a carpenter helping rebuild the city. She had a daughter who loved pretty dresses. And she still kept a lipstick, not the original, which had long since been used up, but its replacement, in her bureau drawer. I want to tell you something, the letter said in careful English. That day you gave us makeup, some women thought it was silly. Some thought it was American corruption. But I understood something different. You saw us as women when our own country saw us as tools. You gave back our femininity when it had been stolen and called weakness. That gift was not small. It was everything. She continued, in Japan, we are rebuilding. And I rebuild myself too. I teach my daughter she can be strong and beautiful. She can serve her family and also care for herself. These things are not opposite. You taught me this with a small lipstick and a mirror. Thank you for helping me remember I was human. Thank you for giving back what I had forgotten, the right to be a woman. Dorothy kept that letter for the rest of her life. In a box with other meaningful things, her brother's medals, her mother's wedding ring, photographs of people and moments that mattered. The letter reminded her that sometimes the most important gifts weren't grand gestures, but small acknowledgments of humanity. You are a woman. You deserve to feel beautiful. You matter beyond your utility. The war had tried to erase that. For a brief moment, in a California POW camp, women on opposite sides of that war had worked together to restore it. Not through politics or treaties, but through lipstick and dresses and the simple revolutionary act of looking in a mirror and seeing a woman instead of a tool. And in that moment, something more important than victory or defeat occurred. The recognition that femininity wasn't weakness, beauty wasn't betrayal, and being a woman, fully, completely, unapologetically, was a form of resistance against every force that tried to reduce humans to their function rather than celebrating their fullness. The lipstick was never just lipstick. It was proof that humanity survived, even in the ruins. That identity could be reclaimed, even after it had been stolen. that enemies could become allies in the most unexpected way, by recognizing each other's fundamental right to be whole, complete human beings. And sometimes, that recognition started with something as simple as opening a pink box and saying, "These are for you. You can be a woman again."